Very good evening. Firstly, let me introduce myself. I'm G. Shekhar Raju, part of the Sales Consulting Center. And with me today is my colleague Nimesh. Both of us are here today to talk about what Oracle blockchain has to offer and the different use cases. And we'll share some of the experiences that we acquired recently while doing POCs with some of those clients. But firstly, thanks to you all. I've never seen such a houseful room in my so many careers, the entire career of 18, 19 years of career with Oracle and elsewhere, and that too at 6 p.m. in the evening. Firstly, thanks to you all. Thanks to you all. Thanks to you all for showing your interest in this Oracle blockchain cloud service, yet to be GA'd. Yes, thanks, absolutely. And let's keep this whole session very, very interactive. I know there are a lot of jargons in terms of the technology words and other things, but let's keep it interactive. Do stop us wherever you need. I know it's tough to be, you've been waiting for this session for a long, long time, for the past 6-7 hours, I guess. Let's keep it interactive. I'm forced to use jargon here today, basically, since I'm presenting, but you can always stop me and ask for more and more clarity on the subject that I would be demonstrating here. Thanks again for all having you here. Yes. Yep. So we have a short agenda basically out here for today, where we would take you through the current state of the world, where we talk about the typical, hub-spoke model or a peer-to-peer, the things around what the current state as is of today in terms of the. By the way, how many guys are invested in the cryptocurrencies? You can raise your hand here. Good. Close the doors. The government is not watching us. Okay, by the way, we are not into currency side of it. We're going more on the enterprise side. How many of them? I see only one hand here. Raise some hands there. I'm invested. I lost money though, basically. That's a different issue. Only few of them. Oh, is it? Or you want to stay away from the eyes of the government and scared of not raising the hand? You can here. Okay. Fair enough. So guys, supply chain ecosystem. Besides that, toward the end, we would talk about some of the use cases and questions from the audiences there. And I would like that you ask me more and more questions today here at this forum. And hopefully we should be clear most of them. Also, that's a disclaimer. Okay. So of late, what's happening is whichever enterprises I walk in, so the first question that, do you have anything to offer on blockchain? Yeah, we do have, and things like that. And pick up any damn industry, and they're talking about, how the blockchain, last year it was chatbots, right? Everything that you pick up, can we do a chatbot around this? Can we do a chatbot around this? Or can we do a IoT around this? So this year, I see an amazing trend can we blockchainize this, basically? Can we blockchainize this? Every industry you pick up, we want to do blockchain, see what. So the question is, and then the same old, we've been doing this with the typical RDBMS, traditional RDBMS. So what's so unique? Some of those questions that I got today at my booth there, basically. So guys, so what's important is you need to pick up your use cases correctly, and see what problem they are solving, and then look for adopting the blockchain. Just because every enterprise is going out there and trying to do something on the blockchain, you should not jump on. First, qualify your use case properly, and then look after who are the multiple stakeholders. Is there a trust issue out there, and how you're going to solve them. So clearly identify the goals that you need to achieve by implementing the blockchain. And it should not be like once you have implemented and then you're finding out, I can do it with the traditional legacy systems, and I'm not seeing it. It shouldn't be the case. So spend more time as to if there are trust issues. So if you look at the traditional, the value proposition in terms of, so trust and provenance is one of the things that I am seeing on the blockchain side of things. Where we're getting more and more tractions on the use cases side of especially on the trust and provenance side. So start with that, and then move over, up the value chain, which is the smart contract and other thing. To start with, you should focus on the trust and provenance side of your industry that you belong to, or try to pick up some of those processes, I would say, where multiple parties are involved and trust is involved, and obviously, more importantly, where the cash is involved, basically, transactions are involved to start. Any questions there? Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that's the current state, the client-server architecture. We all know what's the issue. Highly centralized. There's one nodal point. Somebody has a control of it, and he can manage the access and permissions and everything. If this goes down, the server goes down, everything goes down, right? The traditional client-server network. We all know the challenges. I don't want to bug you with the set of issues and challenges that it has in today's world. So that's one of the network that we have. The model, I would say, architecture one. The other one, we all know peer-to-peer network. It never took off because of the vulnerabilities of the security issues and file sharing issues and the piracy issues and all those things. So these are predominantly two architectures, basically, which we see in the today's state of the architectures. Yeah. Okay. So what's blockchain? Frankly speaking, when I started a year and a half back, I would say, like, the Bitcoin is blockchain. I don't know, that's how I started. Oh, Bitcoin is blockchain. But that's not so. So, I mean, there have been so many technologies out there which have been really disruptors. We got the Olas and the Ubers, we're totally disruptive. But have you seen that government getting disturbed because of any one technology? This is the one, right? I have not seen. So in fact, every month, if you see, and in fact, most recently, government has been giving regulations every fortnight. Today you can buy, tomorrow you cannot buy, today you can buy, and that has been happening. So I've got a couple of my accounts blocked and things like that. I have not seen governments getting panicked about technology so far in my career as much as they with this. And so some of the governments have actually gone in and created coins. I heard Venezuela and a couple of other have created petro coins and other things, basically. So they've been seeing the currencies getting devalued because of some reason or the other, and they have actually gone ahead and creating the sovereign currencies, basically, for them. So such is the impact of this technology, that it has created in my recent, at least in my lifetime, I have not seen a technology disruptor and which can actually change the nation's government, basically, and they had to jump in and give the regulation. Sorry, I'm not getting into the buzzwords. Yes. So what does it do, basically? It's a, remember 4 words. It's a distributable ledger. Between peer-to-peer, everyone can see it's a transparent. And the first question comes is like, what's the difference between the traditional database and blockchain has to offer? It's open, transparent, immutable, verifiable. Those are the simple 4 words, basically, distributed ledger. Today what happens, every enterprise has their own ledger and they only look at it, they only update it, they only change it, everything is meant them, okay? They define the rules, and it is not at all transparent to the larger ecosystem of the vendor. So that's the first thing. It's immutable, it's transparent, it's distributed, it's real time. So a lot of benefits around it. And going forward, what happens is basically lots and lots of vendors would like to connect to only those enterprises who are open in nature, in terms of, when I say open in nature, who keep the ledgers open and transparent, because it has a lot of business benefits attached to it. Yeah, so one thing that I would like to say here is, yes, this is a disruptor, and it's going to stay for a long, long time. Certainly, we are not on the currency side of it, but nevertheless, there would be wallets, and you can write your applications. So this is a platform as a service, and you're free to write, and it will have the wallet as well. Go ahead and write your applications on top of this platform and create not the coins, but in terms of some of those things which can go into the wallets and that can be exchanged. Any questions there? Again, so this is the same thing what I said. Bitcoin is not blockchain. So blockchain is to Bitcoin what internet is to email. Yep, please. No.
What I got in the morning regarding
Mike, please.
It is not a standard kind of thing. One community can have their own standard, another can have their own
Fair enough.
standard. Some example was given like
Fair enough. So I do have some slides. So as to get into the technology side of it.
just you said that it is, what you said, it is going to stay, yeah, it is
Going to stay. The technology is going to evolve there. Technology is continuously going to evolve. If you look at this slide, I'm saying like, this is like the internets of the 90s. So technology is evolving. The businesses, the technologies, everybody is jumping in and out there, trying to create solutions. Yeah, so this is the same transformation phase today with the blockchain, what internet was sometime in 90s. We were all thinking that we could book the tickets online and all those things will happen. And 1990, and we could do that in 2000 around. So those things were streamlined. So likewise, this technology too is actually undergoing that transformation phase. So that would be my answer. So it will take its due course basically before we can do it.
Actually, my concern was, since there is no standard, like we talk about the standards, like for example,
Okay, got your question there.
IEEE, so something.
Fair enough. So this was the phase exactly, what happened to the internet forum here. They set the W3 standard for web services, OSS, and this thing. So it evolved, right? Firstly, the internet came, and then these organizations were formed. So as I talk, there are groups being formed, but they have not been named as such, like the OSS of the web services standards and things like that. But as we talk, there are some organizations being formed so as to make that interledger communication and all those things, making those things possible today. So if I host a hyperledger-based framework, which is OBCS, and you also take some other OEM's hyperledger-based framework, then we both should be able to talk if it is 1.1. And it is continuously evolving. Got it? So 1.1, I think, Hyperledger 1, we should be able to talk. I mean, we can take this offline if I need to answer it. Any question?
Blocking blockchain is the performance aspects.
Okay.
So unless the high processing that is required for the blockchain has been overcome because the proof of work and they need a lot of performance. So will blockchain really,
Scalable is your question. To answer that, see, so it would be like the typical internet era, 1,000 transactions per second of the Swifts, like. But certainly, it's coming at a cost, right? If there are multiple participants in your network and they need to endorse it, then actually you're slowing it up. So it's all about your design, the way you design your blockchain network topology. It all depends upon that, the throughput of this. Certainly, I would agree that today it's not of that speed, that kind of a throughput. What you're seeing today in the internet world, because it is just writing it to the database, right? Typically RDBMS. But out here, what's happening out here, the OBCS has got the consensus framework. The more like the Kafkas of the world and other things are being used. So the more complex your consensus framework that you use makes it more complex in terms of the throughput will be reduced accordingly. And more participants make it more. So that's a design call actually.
that's what makes it ineffective in a real-time environment. So
As I said, the technology is still evolving, and hopefully in a year's time there would be an answer. And you must be looking at the Hyperledger framework. There are continuously some additions or the other for the throughput to be increased in this whole. Hopefully we should see the whole technology is under what I say the transformation phase. So we should see something happening now.
One of the change which is happening in terms of improving the throughput is how can we have the least, the IO transaction which happens in this case. You write it on the ledger. With the world state, you write it on the peer nodes of the ledger as well. So the Hyperledger Fabric group which we have adopted and the other groups as well. They're kind of finding out, okay, what would be the minimum piece of the block which can be written, and still it will make the transaction valid in terms of the block structure, whatever is the core of the blockchain. So there also, there are a lot of being technologies or the standards or the papers, research papers which have been given in few years back being adopted, like one being the zero knowledge proof. A few folks would be knowing over here if they're working on that. So that kind of gives you an option of how you have a lesser blocks or kind of a lesser overload of the IO transactions which could be there. So which would even transcend to having a increased throughput. So those are the things that's still evolving, as Sekhar said, and it will surely be, because the kind of outcome which you see, if you compare with the Bitcoin's kind of world, you would find, okay, you know, or the Ethereum's world, you would find, okay, yeah, there's a lot of lag over there. But when you compare with the enterprise ecosystems across the verticals, there are certainly certain benefits coming up, because once we go to the use case, we'll come to know like how exactly it can benefit. It's like it's trying to remove away a lot of the process inefficiency which exists today. So still, even after having all those lag in terms of the throughput, it is still having an advantage over the existing business processes to transform. So, and slowly the technology also is evolving. Yeah, shall we go
Thanks,
next?
Nimesh. So let's bow our heads to Satoshi Nakamoto, since we were talking about. Next slide, please. Yep. Yep.
When you say the distributed ledger,
Right.
it has to be, standard has to be governed by some country, like India or US or Japan. Distributed ledger for which country?
No, it's not the country based. It's based on it's for the enterprises.
It has to be enterprises also run with, like enterprises there. Then like IBM is running business in India, in the US, Europe. Each country has, they have to file the tax, and their ledgers is in a different structure.
Right,
Not
but
they have got a general ledger.
right, but I think you're talking more from the financial side of it.
Functional
That's
and financial
that's where the
side
regulatory
of the,
concerns come.
Ledger, when you talk about ledger means financial one.
No, not exactly that. Ledger, yeah, if you go with that old knowledge of the accounts, balance and all.
Bitcoins and everything is a money. Money is a financial.
And we are not talking about Bitcoin over here. We're trying to give a perspective about the blockchain. Bitcoin is just one of the use case of implementation.
Yeah, it is a money one, you know.
Only the Bitcoin, not the blockchain.
not,
When you say ledger, what perspective you want to?
Okay, just give us a few minutes. Let's go through it,
Yeah.
and probably you'll have your question answered there itself.
So there is A guy wants to send money to B, basically. How does it move in the blockchain ecosystem? So somebody puts a transaction. What happens in a traditional world? You put a transaction and it straight away goes into the DB, right? There is no consensus framework today in today's ecosystem out there. Somebody wants to transfer, go to internet, NEFT, go, done, basically, right? There is no consensus framework. There is no ledger as such. It is gone into the RDBMS of the systems, or the core banking system that you've been debited with so much money or credited with so much money. A wants to transfer it to B. So, but in the blockchain world, what happens? A transaction comes, a transaction is created basically, but not in the ledger. I mean, A wants to transfer it to B. So, what the first thing that you see here is the transaction has come into the picture. Okay. Now there are other participants in the ecosystem who watches this basically, and say endorses it. Only then it basically goes into the ledger. So that's what is happening. So a transaction was created, that the first block was created that you see. And then the first block, you know, you can see that it has been, now it's in the network. The block which was created here, it's here in the network in the step number 3. And what happens in the step number 4, you see a tick mark out there, is nothing but the consensus. Okay. Suppose so you know a boardroom, right? In a boardroom, what happens? 4 people sit together and make a decision on a resolution. Suppose in a boardroom, there are 2 guys who has the voting right. So the guys who have the voting right are nothing in from the perspective of the blockchain. See them as endorsers. They are the guys who, only when they endorse, it actually goes and sits in the ledger. So here what you see is a consensus is nothing but a policy which has been, it has been acted upon on that transaction, and then eventually that money is transferred to B. So that's how the system is actually getting, a transaction has gone into the ledger. But out here in a real life, you click NEFT and it's gone to the core banking system, done. Nobody knows, nobody approves. Okay, so yes, the tax guys will be doing this going forward, basically, where every transaction, I mean, that's how I foresee. that probably the banks might have to adopt such a thing where these any high valued things being transferred, between two individuals or three individuals. So there would be big amount of stakeholders who can watch this at a real time and approve this at a real time to happen. So, so again. Yeah, so that's upon how you design your network, blockchain network topology. So you can have 5 people who can endorse it, 3 people who can endorse it. So when I say 3 people, these are the 3 important people in the stakeholder in your ecosystem whose approval is mandatory. And I would define them as the endorsers within this network topology. So that's how it's going to go. Yeah. Again, so I've been talking about the traditional database and the blockchain and the differences. Let's look at the images. What does it speak? So it's typical central hub. If this fails, everything else fails. The whole system fails, basically. Okay. And look at this, basically. The centralized node goes off, everything goes off. Let's not look at the entire thing. So there it is. If you look at the traditional database, there is a central nodal agency. If that goes down, the whole ecosystem goes down. Okay, so that's, and we all know, I need not tell the pain areas with this architecture. Not that. It is certainly fit. We have been living with this for a long time, and it has added value to the enterprises who have adopted. But we coming from a different blockchain perspective where we need to identify certain processes which needs to be addressed across multiple stakeholders for a process in an enterprise. So that's where the blockchain fits in. And here, the benefit, what do you see the benefit here? Look, out there is a central nodal body or an agency or a system out there. But here, it's all nodes. So even if a node goes down here, it continues to survive, and you continues to get the information. And at any point of time, it has not gone down. The transactions can still come in, and it is how best you have designed your endorsers and the network topology, so the blockchain continues to run. But out there in that ecosystem on the relational database, and since it has to write into the RDBS, otherwise typically putting everything into the queue till those things doesn't come up. Now, can you appreciate the benefits that blockchain has to offer? Imagine your enterprise has one or two critical processes, especially around the payments or any other businesses or the supply chain, and that just cannot afford. You cannot afford to let them fail. I think blockchain is the right piece where it's continuously on. This is multiple nodes are there at the real time, and you don't need any centralized agency to watch, authorize, or any of those things. It's like the replicated data, so you got your data across all the nodes. So that's the benefit that you see. Any questions on this? Yep. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So those load balancing again are we're getting into the technology side of it. Okay. What you didn't see is I'm coming. Yeah, right. Correct. Right. Right.
If we talk about how the backend model, because here we are talking about transaction will be duplicated across the process.
Right. Right.
So how? See, if centralized, everything should go to database. There is an admin.
Right.
He has all the control. If he wants to make changes.
Right.
So here we want to avoid it.
Correct.
So how we can do that? That is the.
I'm coming there. Okay. So, right, before that, I would like to address this question. Your question was like, here also we do basically the same way, right? you have the high availability. So the question is not high availability. I think if you heard about my initial things that the blockchain has to offer, it is transparent, it is immutable, and it is not writing into the, you make me the database super admin in your office, and I will tell you what all I can do on sitting on top of it. Right? I can do that. Certainly I can do that. But if I give you everything here in this ledger, you will not be able to do reproduce anything. You cannot break my blocks. Even if you have the access, the Genesis block, once it gets created, and then subsequently the hash of the previous block gets stacked to another block, basically. So that way it's a chain. So I, as a super user or an administrator of a blockchain network, in this lifetime cannot be able to sneak in and put a block in between, actually. Okay? And here I can do all these things. Okay, sorry, I think you interpreted my blockchain concept from the perspective of the high availability and all those things. No. So I think that it was just a concept saying that if you have any business workflow, say it continues to run. The different nodes are running and they will continue to exchange. Just because somebody has not, the approval will continue to happen in this ecosystem, whereas not in this. See, we have an IC and NIXIs running a lot of applications. Today, if that land registration system goes down in one of the things, you know, you're like said helpless, but out there in this ecosystem, you are capable of designing such a network wherein the nodes are alive and they continue to serve it even if there is one node going down. Now coming to your question, sir, could you repeat your question so that? Right. 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 Correct. Right. 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 Fair enough. I got your question. Right. Right. So, as you rightly said, this solves that trust and provenance, which is the bottommost in the bottommost order of the value proposition that this has to be. Yeah. So again, this is not like a typical user ID and a password. There is a certificate which is being issued to, and everything that goes in, it's not rests in a typical database. It is a block which is created and out there. Okay, and again, it all. So it's a distributed in the per se. When you actually define your topology, all of those nodes are separate nodes actually, which are not residing at your host. Okay, so you, me, and Nimesh, for instance, and you become the founder. So you have the founder org in your house basically, but I am somebody in your ecosystem. So I too have the rights to actually download that ledger and see what you have updated in your ledger. And if I am an endorser, I can endorse it, every transaction that's going out there. So all three of us need not be in the same data center actually, and I know that's how it's transparent. And any change that you make at your side, basically it is visible to me. It doesn't go into the ledger unless I approve it basically, or he approves it. So and it's certainly immutable. Yes. Right. Trade management. Right. Correct. Right.
Let's take a real estate.
Right.
So as a their personal parties are in. So how, finally if I personally if I involve, there is going to centralize that.
Right.
How that can be addressed?
No, so that's
Yeah.
So that's what if you when you design the blockchain solution. So what exactly is being offered from Oracle is the PaaS offering. You would create your solution on top of it. So the core thing is you need to define your asset. So if you take the real estate, you need to define the real estate related assets inside the blockchain ecosystem, whatever network you're going to design. On top of that, you would design your network with the stakeholders over there. And then you would say the endorsers. Who would be the endorsers? Not everyone would be the endorser for a particular transaction, but there would be one or more endorsements happening for any transaction. So your asset definition is the key. The second thing is the endorsement. So whenever any transaction is happening, when you have defined an asset, let's say we both are into a real estate agreement to kind of I'm doing a sell and you are buying that property, right? And there's a regulator, the sub-registrar, which is there in Indian context, who kinds of approves that transaction in the current process, right? The same thing can be mapped when you go into, I'm keeping aside the legal contracts. I had a discussion with a gentleman that it's very difficult to translate the complete legal contracts into smart contracts. I agree to it, but it has the potential to define all that. Coming to the solution part, so let's say we define, the organization who is creating the solution, they define the assets, they define who would be the endorsers would be, and they define the smart contracts, which would say that, okay, if some approval happens, this would be the next step which has to do. So what exactly would be the next step over here? I'll come to that. So let's say the application, client application design, which has a web interface or a mobile interface, when you give an intent, or I give an intent that I want to sell my property, right? And you came as saying that, okay, I'm buying it. Now, we both go into an agreement over a private communication channel. Again, in the network topology, we define using the blockchain platform, saying for the pricing negotiations, right? That is in between us. We both can see what is the pricing agreement. Now, when we both agree on it, let's say you have an application on the client application, we say, okay, I agree, I buy it. Now, once you buy, to kind of map the current process, there has to be some notification which would go to the government body. In our case, it's the regulator over here, sub-registrar, right, who would do an approval. So we can even override that, but that won't happen, especially in the case where you have the regulatory concerns coming into picture. So let's say there's an interface for the registrar to kind of say, okay, approved. The previous transactions, the complete title looks good. I am being the owner, and you are the new buyer, and the transactions can be approved, and payment also is. And let's say we create a system where the payment reflection is also happening. So once the sub-registrar approves, what exactly would happen? The title ownership would go from me to you. So that's where, when you say the tamper-proof, how would we manage that? You would manage that by mapping the data concepts along with the network concepts. The network concepts is given by the framework itself. The moment you design the network stakeholders, it would be given, each of the entities would be given a signature. When you define the smart contracts, so let's say somebody who's building the solution for both, for the overall land record systems would be coming on a table and saying that, okay, these are the legal contracts which has to go, this has to be the workflow and all. They'll build the smart contracts according to that. And whatever the transaction happens, since in defining the system that we both have to endorse it, since we are the parties, that would go and sit in the system saying that, okay, we both have agreed to it. So that's where the network itself, with the code, the system components of nodes, the endorsements, the asset structure, and the encryption and the signature, the key, the private key, public key kind of models, it gives a kind of tamper-proof block of data getting generated for each and every transaction. And that's where it's making it tamper-proof. What exactly you would do with the system, blockchain system like Oracle blockchain, you would have a kind of a designing tool where you can define the network, endorsements, the parties who would be there, and you can have a monitoring tool on top of it. So other than that, you would have to build a solution, client applications, which will talk to that for doing the read and write transactions, essentially using the system components of blockchain. We'll run over here because we are kind of running short.
You can take the demo. Yeah. Okay. So in the interest of time, I think we'll move to the demo directly. Yep.
Sure. So just skipping a bit, this is more of the Bitcoin side, which
so you all know. So this is an interesting use case that we have done for the supply chain side of it, and you should like this. Over to you, Nimesh.
So I think it will answer one of the questions, like it's not always linked to the money or the financial part. It's a matter of how you define the assets. In this particular use case, it is being done for, we have taken a consideration of the entity being a port terminal, wherein it's a usual kind of, it manages the supply chain scenario, when there's a supplier of a consignment and there is a buyer of a consignment, and then we have a regulatory body like customs as well over there. There's no money part over here, but what exactly is the asset? Before coming to that, I would like to put a bit of highlight on the business aspects, so that you can be able to kind of map that, okay, what exactly blockchain is giving me in terms of benefit. Like if a few of you have attended the previous session, there was a very small snippet where it say that error list was changed to var, and it is giving more productivity to developers, right? The same thing if you talk about the enterprises, even a 1% of efficiency in the business process goes into the very larger context, right? So something in terms of the port operators, the recent survey done last year, these are the three major concerns. They have a lot of concerns to increase their profitability, to optimize their processes, was the first, was what all the operators said, then the cost reduction, and then improving the yard operations. So we kind of tried to, see how exactly blockchain can give a solution for it. So what exactly they were looking for it? Since the port terminals are the key hubs for managing the supply chain of supplier and the buyers, they were thinking, if we can make a marketplace wherein the goods transaction can happen over the blockchain. Even now, we can have a database-based application which can provide the supplier and buyer ecosystem. But what if I have a supplier and buyer ecosystem over the blockchain which can give a secure and transparent marketplace, right? When I'm not owning the data, the people who are creating the data are the owners, the people who are getting into the transactions are the owners for it, right? I'm considering myself as the port operator over here. Real-time tracking of data on the logistics to all stakeholders. So in this particular use case, we have plugged in IoT along with the blockchain, right? I'll come to the quick demo on that. It's a video that we have created. Faster completion of transactions. Every one of us know how exactly it matters when it comes to the enterprise business processes. If you can improve the efficiency of any of the process, it's always transcend into the cost of ownership for that, right? The operational delays as it matches to whatever the reductions. So you reduce the operational delays with respect to customs approval. The customs approval usually it kind of goes into, it's a different question how we can bring on board the government parties. But if those can be a part of your blockchain solution, imagine the kind of amount of paperwork and the workflow levels which they have for approving any consignment, right? It's always, we have seen the one side of advantage of the GST, which it has removed all those checkpoints when you have a flat tax structure across the country. So that's kind of improvement in the business efficiency on one of the process part. So similarly, can that be achieved with the solution of blockchain over the for the supply chain scenario? And lastly, it should be system-driven so that it ensures that the manipulations are not being done. Let's say any IoT data or any business transaction, somebody is not faking it up running behind the scenes query. So what exactly we have taken? Fine, support terminal. We have an ecosystem of seller or the supplier and the buyer, and then there is a custom officials as well, right? So we named it as 2 to tango. How exactly it is? So supplier will be marketplace. Fine. We have a client application wherein the supplier would go and enter the details of what exactly they want to sell. The moment that is entered, that record is gone into the blockchain and it's available to, so the network is, we have all the suppliers, the enterprise suppliers and the enterprise buyers. So the moment it is gone, you can create your own notifications and all those things, by which they would be able to know that, these are the new produce available. Now, as a buyer, I would go, the buyer would go over there and search for the produce. Now, what exactly is different over here? The core concept of immutable data. Fine, the moment it is entered, now we'll take it as an example of it's entered as a containers, right? It has the IoT sensors attached to it. Now, let's say it's a produce related to 3,000 kgs of wheat, right, which is going cross-country from India to somewhere in China or somewhere in Europe, right? Now, they have an agreement which says that, for the container, the shipment, the temperature should not go below 25 degrees and should not go above 35 degrees. The humidity should not be going beyond 30%, right? Now, how would you ensure in the current system? You can still have the sensors, but you would have a database system which would be getting updated with that. But there's always a chance of that being faked, right? That's where it is. But here, what we're saying is, once you have designed the network and your IoT sensors are directly feeding the data into the blockchain system in the ledger, there's no way you can go, somebody can go and change it. The reason being the core nature of the blocks itself. It's all encrypted data. The other thing, whosoever are the parties of that, network, everywhere the data is replicated. If somebody wants to change anything or make anything behind the scenes, the data has to update at all the nodes. It cannot be done right away, right? So that's where it brings you the inherent capability of the blockchain network. And we are talking about the assets as containers over here. Now, I'll play a video also. Let me quickly explain it. So once the shipment starts, fine, it is put into marketplace, buyer says, fine, it looks into the IoT sensor data, it's all matching as per the specifications, and then say, fine, I'm agreed to buy it. They can at that time define, these are the certain contracts of our legal contracts of our trading agreement, when, which let's say that should be reaching within this particular time duration, it should follow this particular path and all those things. It should be coming to this port, which in case anyway we have a single port over here. Now all that thing is put into picture. Now those things can be defined as part of the smart contract. How would you map the number of days? Again, that's again in business logic, you can put when the shipment, I have agreed for a shipment and when it is kind of delivered to me. The GPS coordinates from the IoT sensors can give you the tracking of the paths which has been followed. If it is a part of a legal agreement, you can verify that as well. It should be custom approved if it says. Now again, the custom approval also is happening on the blockchain, so nobody can produce a kind of a fake paper with the smuggled goods saying that, okay, no, this is customs approved. You don't have to go into a big cycle of your legal team verifying all that, whether it's a proper or genuine consignment or not, right? So, and the moment, so all the data is getting into that, and then the customs, when it comes to customs also, they can see, this, since they are part of the network, they can see that data in the blockchain. And they can, based on that, let's say that's only a part of their whole process. But at least that part of the business, their business process is getting more efficient because they are getting it in the real time, all the data, and they can verify it right away on their system. Once everything is approved, the buyer would say, okay, fine, I agree to buy it. And will, the moment let's say, okay, fine, buy on the client application, you can have a smart contract. If all the parties agree to it, you can trigger a payment release from the smart contract. You don't have to kind of submit all the procurement department of my company or the buyer company don't have to submit all the papers to the financial department and go through the whole process of making the payment release. Now imagine the kind of potential it has to bringing in more efficiency in terms of the payment realization, in terms of the procurement acceptance, the procurement whole cycle as well. That's where the efficiency comes into picture. So these are just a few texts, what I have spoken in a very brief high level. So we leverage the blockchain IoT apps combo. So from the Oracle Kitty, we have a IoT apps which gives you the dashboard and all those things which you can, using which you can monitor all that data. Blockchain part we have already discussed quite a lot. The transparency and ease of governance and efficient operations. Employ smart contracts to automate further stages such as payments, contract renewals. It could be refunds, reconciliations, and all those things. In case something goes bad before a buyer accepts it, they have the data over there. So someone in that whole ecosystem, so here we have talked about only about the supplier and the buyer. In real world, you have a distributor, you have the regional distributors, then finally it comes to the buyer, right? So you can map all those into the network. For the use case purpose, we have make it more simplistic. So I'll quickly play, so this is what the architecture we have over here at a very high level. So what you see over there, the very high level, the core system components. So you have a gateway proxy, you have the peers, smart contracts, and ordering service. I'll talk only about the blockchain over here. So peers are something like the transacting nodes of the blockchain. So if you go to any of the, you can look into the Hyperledger Fabric as well. So those were the nodes with which your client applications would be talking to. And each peer for each of the stakeholders. So these are the things created for each of the stakeholder or the nodes created as part of the network. So let's say for buyer, for the seller, for the customs official, in the technology per se, in the system or in the cloud, you will have all these nodes running for each of the entities. So any transactions happening would be happening with respect to their particular entities. Based on the endorsements defined, it will be the ordering service will be taking in inputs from all the peers and then qualifying it to kind of written to the ledger. Once that ordering service says that, okay, it's all the validated as per the endorsement definitions you have given, it will be given back to the peers to commit to their local state. So what we call is two states over here. The local states, which is at the peer level, which is actually to the real world entity level, and then the global state, which is at the ledger, at the whole overall framework level. So the ledger is maintained at the two levels over here. The rest of the things is kind of the custom application and other cloud offerings from Oracle, which we have integrated the blockchain with. So let me kind of quickly, okay, I have a few more slides. So this is what it kind of gives you, the monitoring tool which I was talking about. So this is the network topology. When you create in the graphical format, you'll see the complete textual details also on the, once it's GA. It gives all the details about the, so these are called nodes. So you have this other peers entities, and then the other one is a certifying authority with each and every entity, and one is the ordering service. And what you see on the other side is the channels. So that can give you a picture that, okay, you can have a common channel for broadcasting. You can have a private channel for certain transactions where you need only certain stakeholders to be party of it. So that's where the permission blockchain comes with the offering. It's not like everyone who's part of the network would see all the transactions. You can map it as per the enterprise systems requirement. Okay, let me quickly play a video. Maybe that will also ease out the burden over here. Oh, sorry. Where is it? Okay.
Mark administers his retail store
Oh.
with great care. Everyone in the neighborhood knows Mark's store for the freshness of his products. They all expect nothing but top quality, and on top of that, safety. Mark has a tough job to reach their expectations, but he does that through a top supply process that can never be possible without blockchain technology. It's always challenging for Mark to trust his supply sources, know the provenance of the products, and be sure of the immutability of the recorded transaction. When Mark decides to get a new transport of fresh food, he contacts Andy, the seller. Andy works in China where he...
So we've given a perspective. Mark is one of the buyer over here, and Andy is the seller. Mark is in India, and Andy is in China, and is kind of trying to buy a produce from seller in China.
places food containers on the market. Each time he does that, he checks all the safety parameters of the containers, including temperature. That is possible through IoT sensors that send information to the blockchain ledger, which is displayed on Andy's dashboard. He notices that the temperature of one container has risen outside.
So what you see is one of the client application. The tabular format is something is the ledger data, what is being fetched from the ledger, which is already recorded. The graphical map format over there kinds of gives maps the GPS coordinates given by the IoT sensor on the containers. So all that you can see in the real time over there, and also in the tabular format.
The normal range. Checking the temperature history, Andy notices that it has been like that for quite some time. Using blockchain technology, Mark can log into the same platform and notice the status of the containers. He notices the one with temperature problems and orders another one. As the container leaves Andy's warehouse, thanks to the IoT sensors, him and Mark can always keep track of it. Besides knowing how much time the container spends in transit, they can monitor the temperature, thus making sure the food is kept in optimal parameters. No matter how many links appear in the transport cycle, due to the blockchain technology, they can trace it transparently and easily. On Friday, the container reaches customs in India. Tim, the customs officer, can log into the application and check the tracking history of the container during its transit. After approving the transport, he can click on the Get History button to show the updated ledger data. Mark logs in again and checks his newly bought container. He also checks that the tracking history is up to date. After making sure everything is alright, he accepts the shipment. The blockchain made it possible for Mark to trust the supply process. He knew exactly what merchandise he ordered and its condition. At each point in the transit process, he knew its provenance, as he could trace it with the tracking numbers. Due to the digital ledger that offered transparency and security, nobody without authorization could have interfered with the transport. By using a blockchain-backed supply process, it's easy for Mark to reach the high expectations of his customers and keep track of his products from source to destination.
Okay, so that was a quick demo what I already spoke about, but to kind of show you that, okay, it's not only financials. Just give me a moment.
Everyone in the neighborhood knows.
So to kind of answer one of the questions, how do we ensure? So it's actually as part of the blockchain core concept, the network, the encryptions, the block structure, which ensures that nobody can tamper with the data. The moment the data is written, it's one way, like it's written in an encrypted format. At the peer level, you have certain things like you have choice of maintaining something in the database as well. You can query it, but what you will get is only the binary output. You won't be able to get what exactly the data over there. That's only using the framework you would be able to see the details out of it, and you can define your business process on top of it. So it's essentially, it's just a platform. Now, it's not giving you, the moment, you cannot say that, okay, I put blockchain and everything will be resolved. If you have to go through a kind of, as Shekhar was earlier mentioning, you need to kind of think which use case, what benefits, the business aspects, the contract aspects when you're talking about smart contracts, the business process aspects, what you want to make it more efficient. So you need to think of all this, map it with the blockchain core concepts, which it is giving, and essentially it's giving you a shared distributed ledger and encryptions along with the consensus mechanism. So if you think in these terms, it's quite simple terms, which usually people think in the real world as well. But it's coming as a kind of an offering in the technology per se, which has the potential of mapping your real-world challenges or the real-world processes exactly in the system as it happens. I'll hand it over back to Shekhar.
Thanks, Nimesh. So, yeah, we're open for questions out here. So, please feel free to have questions. I mean,
Mike, please.
I mean, I can talk about the slide, but it's good that we have an interesting session and we learn something, and that's the reason.
Right.
Hello.
And, yep.
My name is Sudhi Gowda. Actually, I want to know what is the velocity, because IoT produces data in terms of high velocity, high volume. How blockchain handles this high velocity and high variety plus volume of the data?
Correct. So, to answer that, I think you need to configure it in a fashion that, so you won't catch all the temperatures, right? You have to slot it accordingly, at every interval of 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and look at those things, basically what you need to capture.
Yeah, that has to be analyzed.
That is more of a design aspect that you need to, while you do at the design time. And accordingly design your blockchain network to handle that kind of a throughput that's coming out from your IoT. So you have to, that's more of a design consensus that you need to do on your side.
Right. I think you're coming from the perspective of how much of throughput it can handle, right? Am I right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So essentially,
Because
it's like
IoT produces a lot of data, variety, volume, and velocity.
yeah. So we have done it as part of the demo, but essentially it's like it's a matter of design. We need to see how exactly it's throughput. There are certain sizing and all those things.
Why I raise this question is because you cannot go and tamper the data, right?
Yeah.
But whatever the data produced by the IoT, that data has to be analyzed before putting into blockchain, as per my knowledge. Otherwise, all the data cannot be put it into a blockchain block.
No, that is something you can define as part of your IoT sensors, and if you're using an I2CS, you can define it over there. That what exactly? Let's say you want to only write down the variations, which is not accepted, right?
Yeah,
so
threshold values you can mention, and whatever the threshold crosses,
Correct.
that transaction can be put it into block.
Right.
But there is a chance that at the threshold value fixing, you can tamper it.
No,
before entering into the
that's
blockchain.
something you need to ensure from that's the input side, right? Not from the blockchain perspective. That's your client application.
Right.
Now you can have something created, let's say even a mobile app, right? When you can have an app created where the user enters X value, but when you're sending it to blockchain, you change it to Y value and then sending it. That's something outside of the blockchain ecosystem, right? So that's we need to, as a system, what your solution you're delivering, you need to ensure on that part.
Okay, I skipped the slide, but basically here you can see the transactions throughput. And if you look at OBCS, we are more into the permissioned and private side of the ecosystem, and the throughput that's been written basically is hundreds and the thousands. But it all depends on the way you design your network, the way the incoming stream that is coming, and a lot of those factors, and you cannot frame it to one value kind of a thing, And so I know you guys must have been used to in the typical client server technique. There's a thumb rule.
One more I would like to add to this, because that's a reason most probably this blockchain is now they are reinventing or recycling with the kind of IOTA. Have heard of that? I don't know. It's IOTA. That's a new technology which is most probably alternative to blockchain that talks machine to machine itself. Any kind of data produced from the IoT, that will, without any manual intervention or any analytics, that goes into a block.
I think you have the M2M protocols already there for the IoT ecosystem.
Yeah.
So, but there is always a cloud service, so IoT sensors always connect to a hub, and then it goes to cloud service, and then finally it goes to other systems, right?
Yeah, that's the reason they are building a new technology. It's called IOTA.
Exactly. So as you kind of giving a solution.
Oracle is, yesterday I read it a document,
Right.
TechGig. Oracle is very much interested in making the IOTA technology.
Very well. So that's you are kind of answering your question itself, right? So it's like it's not only the blockchain, the way it is giving the advantage in terms of the ledger and encryption and all. It will kind of trigger potential of redesigning of the existing systems, other enterprise systems, how we can ensure the security of the data on those fronts, because the storing part is already ensured. So the other ecosystem has to kind of evolve accordingly. So IOTA would be the answer on the IoT side.
Right.
Thank you.
So I just want you to have a look at this slide. That's the public side of it, which is the currency side of it. It hardly makes around 7 to 15% per second transactions. And if you look at the private permissioned and especially the hyperledger-based ecosystem between hundreds and thousands, the way you define your transactions, actually. So that's the throughput that we typically talk about. You get that? It's a policy that you write, the consensus policies that you write, and that's how the consensus policies that you define, it's automated.
So it's a matter of designing your application as well. So let's say, as I was talking about the...
Right. So that's why you have to define your network accordingly, and based on the process that you have chosen, especially in the see, the whole point, the corruption is one of the big things in the land records. There are multiple agencies within the State Department. You know, if the whole point is to remove this hand, right? Who presses the OK, and that's the areas where you need automated, consensus happening or the approvals happening, and then you assign your title deeds of a land or something. So those are the areas of automated approvals happening. But then you can still have the controls in manual control to approve those assets.
Right, so it's
a
matter of how you design the solution. Right. So you can identify, okay, fine, not, let's say you have 100 manual approvals. Okay, so you can say, okay, no, we certainly need manual approvals at certain stages, but we can do away with this 50 stages of approvals. So those things you can put into smart contracts over there, which is essentially your business logic. When you can say that, okay, level 1 to 10, if level 1 is approved, I can directly go to level 4 because I have the right set of data. I don't need further approvals to come to the level 4. So especially in the regulatory related scenarios, I don't think you can directly do it with all the approvals. It would be gradual anyway, but you can slowly bring in more efficiencies by way of having the automated contracts.
So this is the world of smart contracts. The whole point is to get out of that BPM world that you're talking about, and that's where you're defining the smart contracts very clean and clear, and you have transformed your business document into a smart contract, and that this whole ecosystem, basically the network, the blockchain network is running on those smart contracts or smart rules that you have already defined. So everybody is playing by the rule book. So there's no point somebody sitting and actually approving that, because otherwise you're going back, hitting upon your efficiency of that process, there's no point. So that way, it needs to be automated, basically.
Right. And to kind of give a bit of a technical perspective over here, I assume that they weren't looking from the more technical perspectives. So what you get as part of development scenarios is, one is the cloud offering, which gives you the base framework. Now, on top of that, you will be creating the client solutions, which will talk to the blockchain platform offering via the gRPC or the REST services. And then it would be your smart contracts, which is currently having the Golang support, but Node.js and other supports is also there. So people who would be writing smart contracts would be writing the codes in using these languages. Then your client application, whichever you're trying to build, it could be in any of your choice of your frameworks. It's only a matter of what you want to send. You define that. It should be conforming to the assets defined in the blockchain. And if you're trying to trigger any false operation, let's say we're trying to do a redo or something like that, if it is not defined as part of the endorsement configuration, it will be denied by the blockchain side. So more technical part, I thought of kind of giving it over here in this prescriptive manner. So you would be, essentially, and then there'll be an admin role who would be kind of a one-time design activity, you can say, would do network designing for all the stakeholders, mapping all the entities in the blockchain system. The endorsement definitions, the chain code deployment and all those things would be done probably by your admin, who would essentially be maybe your support team or something like that.
Yeah. Sorry,
So I think you're asking about Oracle blockchain solution, if there's any.
No, currently we don't have anything out. You want something to code and practice, basically, or that any you're talking about?
Yes. So,
right. Good. You got the question?
The Oracle offering would be becoming GA, whatever we're talking about, the Oracle blockchain cloud service. It will be generally available sometime in May. It's currently in the pre-GA phase where we are working along with the partners and the closed ecosystems. So as soon as it's become a PaaS offering, you can use that for creating your own samples and applications. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.